I'm Andrea Giles, and you're listening to the Heal from Infidelity podcast, episode 154, A New Look at Forgiveness with Dara McKinley. Hello, and welcome to the Heal from Infidelity podcast, where courageous women learn not only to heal from their spouse's betrayal, but to become the boldest, truest, most decisive, and confident versions of themselves ever. If you know there's more for you than the life you're currently living, but don't quite know how to get there, you are in the right place. Stick around to learn how to create a life that will knock your own socks off. Is it possible? It is, and I'm here to show you how. I'm your host, Andrea Giles. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Heal from Infidelity. I love when I can bring special guests on that know more about a topic than I do, that have more depth in it than I do, who have studied it more than I have. And while there are episodes here for you to listen to about forgiveness, today, I am bringing you somebody who her whole business is around forgiveness. That's what she does. It's what she helps people with. And I've been really intrigued by her because she has a different way of looking at forgiveness that I think you will all find really, really useful today. Welcome today, Dara McKinley. So glad to have you here. Can you say hello?
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think we should just dive on in. Tell us about yourself. Tell us about how you got into the business of forgiveness. What led you here?
Okay. So
we're going in. Let's just go.
So I was born a very spiritual little girl. I was specifically raised to seek spirituality for myself. My mother grew up in a Catholic family, and she's very much a questioner. And so she would question the teachings and she would get reprimanded for it. So she thought, like, I'm going to raise my kids to be seekers and to seek for themselves. And that's what I did. And beginning when I entered college and I pursued a degree in psychology, I have always been fascinated with spirituality, psychology, and where the two meet up. And I even have a graduate degree in Buddhism and psychology. Wow. And I'm very much a whatever works type of person. I was always trying new things, always studying healing modalities. And that's how I spent 3 decades of my life. But when I intersected with forgiveness, I had been on this path for 2 decades. And should I go into how I arrived to forgiveness?
Yeah, for sure.
So forgiveness, as a very spiritually and psychologically oriented person, forgiveness always intrigued me, but I'm also extremely practical. And I never could really grok how someone just pardons somebody else. And that was the main definition I had heard throughout my life, was that forgiveness is one's ability to pardon. And I loved it in theory, that we could all be so high-minded and loving, and that we could pardon people who have done strong things.
Strong.
But word. Whenever I actually went, okay, well then how does that work? I remember the one time someone said something that it really made sense to me. I was in a universal church in Seattle, and the teacher started talking about forgiveness. And I went to the edge of my seat oh, she's going to explain it to me finally. And she didn't really deeply go into it, but she just said one thing that to this day I reflect on and go, oh, I get it now. She said, to forgive is to give forth. And she just kind of took the word and reversed it. And at the time, I remember thinking, well, I need more, but now I see what she meant. So here I am. In the early 2000s, I had an idea for a business. And in my naive youth, I rushed into creating this business with business partners who would prove to be incompatible. But the business took off, and we just kind of endured each other for as long as we could. Okay, and then everything fell apart. And I ended up losing my share of the business. And so at the time, I had 2 decades of psychology and spirituality behind me. So I was like, okay, this sucks, but I will get over it. I will focus on gratitude. I will process my emotions. I will recreate my life, kind of all the things that I had studied. And 3 years after this incident, I still wasn't over it. And I just kept having intrusive thoughts of how wrong it was, because there was a huge layer of deceit around the ending. And so I just was really hooked on that. And I just kept finding myself, really wanting to focus on 100 different things. I just kept having this like narrative enter my brain that was kind of ruminating and resentful about how wrong the ending was. So I had a friend at the time, an older wise woman who like watched the whole thing go down. And like every 6 to 9 months, I would kind of combust on her and just vent about how upsetting the whole thing was. And she would listen to me and she'd say, yes, I understand. Then she'd end the conversation with, you might want to consider forgiveness. I would get so irritated.
What do you mean?
Didn't you just hear what happened to me? Mm-hmm. and this happened like 3 or 4 times, like clockwork. She would end the conversation with that. Okay, so here I am. It's now 2012, October of 2012. It's 3 years to the month that the whole rupture happened. And I start to have symptoms of a mystery illness. It's anxiety, fatigue, and insomnia. And I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. The doctors can't figure out what's happening with me. And I start freaking out that something's really wrong with me. And I'm, again, very spiritual person, so very intuitive person, but very grounded about my intuition. And I have noticed, over the course of my life that when I'm very upset is actually when my intuition is almost the clearest. And it's because, my ego has completely left the field, and messages can come through very clearly. So I remember it was the full moon weekend. It was the weekend that Hurricane Sandy was hitting the East Coast. It was this big super full moon. And I, got pretty much had a down on my knees moment where I am freaked out to my core, universe, you have got to tell me how to guide me out of this. Like whatever you say, I will do. I was making this bargain.
I'm in.
And the message that came through was forgive. And once again, I was irritated. But it was so strong that I couldn't ignore it. And so I said, okay, fine. I accept this mission. I'm a woman who can follow directions. Like there has to be some forgiveness how-to online. Let me jump online. I Googled how to forgive, thinking that some 5-step thing to how to forgive would pop up. And what came up was why a person should forgive. And I was able to find a few threads online, forum threads about how to forgive. And the main discussion would just say, you just do it. You just do it. So I was like, I am someone who needs directions. And so I was like, wow, I'm going to have to figure this out on my own. And so thinking, we're going to need to swing back to the illness piece because people really have a lot of questions about that I notice in my podcast discussions. So I was so motivated by the fact that I had this illness to figure it out. And so the question that kind of initiated me into the process was, okay, I have been thinking about how wrong this thing was for the last 3 years. What's the opposite of that? And that was the first step I took into the world of forgiveness. And when I was done, I define forgiveness as a lot of things, but one of the main things I define it as is a spiritual process where I truly had to create a new neural pathway in my brain that wasn't there before. So 3 weeks after I took this first step, I felt completely peaceful and free. And as a geek for healing modalities, I was really wowed. I was like, whoa. I was like, forgiveness is for real. That worked. I don't have the resentment anymore. And so that was one thought I had. And the second thought I had that I'll never forget was, and that wasn't pardoning. Why does everyone say forgiveness is pardoning? But that was that. I then went on to use what I had developed I was like, well, let me see if it works with forgiving myself about something. And let me see if it works. And so I became a geek in my own little personal life for doing this forgiveness practice. But over the next 2 years, I started talking to friends, families, colleagues, and I started to see oh my God, so many people are in this boat that they have something they want to forgive and there's just no practical path.
Mm-hmm.
So I started teaching then, but I say that was actually when forgiveness really started to teach me. And so it's been like a decade-long journey of basically like contemplating forgiveness in every free second I've had.
Amazing. And how interesting the twists and turns that life takes us on that you probably didn't imagine 20 years ago that this would be your whole career,
that I would be a forgiveness teacher. Yeah.
Yes, like this would be your whole career. Amazing. Right. So I have a couple questions for you. That's an amazing story. I know that my listeners very much relate. You mentioned a few things. You mentioned deceit. You mentioned resentment, right? These pieces that you were carrying around that were very hurtful, right? That were very hurtful. You mentioned intrusive thoughts. That's something that comes up a lot. Mm-hmm. And you were carrying all of those things, and then you kind of surrendered into, I guess I'm going in. I guess this is what I'm going to figure out. And very quickly, you felt the transformation from that, right? Would you agree?
Right.
Okay, so a couple of questions I have for you that come up in my discussions with my clients, something that I see sometimes. What's the difference to you between the kind of forgiveness that you experienced and that you describe and that you help people with, and a kind of spiritual bypassing type of thing and calling it forgiveness? Like mm-hmm. Do you know what I'm saying? Like calling absolutely. It that, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. What comes up around that for you?
So I believe the mainstream definitions of forgiveness are pardoning, ceasing anger, having compassion, and letting go. And I have come to see those as all potential results of forgiveness and not the act of forgiveness. And what I discovered in that process was, what I asked was, I was like, okay, so these are all the things that you're supposed to be able to do as someone who forgives. And what is actually the force that empowers all those things to happen? Because all those things are actions. So what is going on behind those actions that enables those four things to take place? And then I actually have a very strong component in my course about emotions. So I do think that if you're, and listen, I have read, so I need to do the disclaimer right now. I have read and know of many stories of people who have survived atrocities, who swear that pardoning is what set them free. And I believe these people. Like, I'm offering kind of like an addition to this definition. So if pardoning is the thing that sets a person free, like, I believe you, and that's awesome. My work is for the people who it doesn't set them free, that they need to kind of get, I get under forgiveness's hood, essentially. And I look and I look at the mechanics, and so this is who I'm representing and who my work is for. So I see so clearly how to kind of say, like, oh, just let it go. Oh, just have some compassion. Oh, just pardon them. I can see how much that seems and is spiritual bypassing. So the way I teach forgiveness is I actually teach it as it's a twofold definition. The first part, it's a person's ability to apply unconditional love in a very practical way. And the second part of the definition is identifying exactly what needs it. Wow. And so there's a big emotional component in what I do, because I feel like unconditional love, which I also define is a spiritual force that comes through us in many different ways. For some of us, it's through family. For some of us, it's through passions, like it's through creativity. We are kind of channels for it. And so it gets blocked if you aren't in right relationship with your emotional world. Okay. So I believe that, like, forgiveness is very emotionally healthy and requires people to do emotional work.
Yeah, what I'm hearing from you is it's not to bypass the emotional work. It's actually signing up for it, like saying, okay, I'm going to feel these things. I'm going to look at them and having that be part of your healing, and then having the things that you described be the result of it. The ability to hold more compassion, the ability to, those things that you mentioned. I forget all the bullet points that you said.
Yeah. Compassion, letting go, ceasing anger. The whole like magically ceasing anger.
Right.
Again, like I know that there's people who are very cerebral who letting go truly works for them. Again, because I really observe like human beings and I see their different orientations in the world. And I think for people who are very thought heavy, like letting go actually makes perfect sense to them and is all they need, you know? But I think there's people who are very emotional centered. I am one of them. And we actually need to see our emotions in order to experience emotional health. So one of the things I teach in the course is how to circulate emotions. It's a very like taboo thing, like in mainstream conversation, like talking about emotions, I think. And so every anatomical system of the body needs to circulate in order to be healthy, and emotions are no exceptions. It's part of our human anatomy. It's supposed to circulate, and when it circulates, we experience health. And so I just want people to be very practical and to make emotions just a very mundane conversation, and caring for one's emotions a very mundane conversation.
Beautiful way of putting it. I love that. Like it's just part of what we do, right? Part of just what we do to take care of ourselves.
And once you start doing it, it's a great part of what we do.
Yeah. I love that. So tell me more about the difference between forgiving and pardoning. So I'll give you a little context of something that I hear a lot from my clients is they're afraid to forgive because they are thinking that it then means that it's okay. That it's okay that it happened, that they should be over it, that they just move forward now and don't talk about it anymore. And sometimes spouses of some of my clients will say, well, you said that you forgive me, so let's not talk about it anymore. We don't need to talk about it. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, big topic.
Yes.
So I believe that if someone has done something very strong to hurt another person that they're in, significant relationship and partnership with and want that partnership to move forward, I actually am a believer of making amends. Like, so my question is like, has the person who offended, has the offender made a significant gesture of amends?
Yeah.
Or are they just saying like, you just need to forgive me?
Right. So let's give scenarios of both, because I see both. I see the significant gestures, and then where some of my listeners are still just, they're afraid to kind of go there. They're afraid to let go of it. They're afraid to forgive because in their mind, they're making it mean that it's okay. Okay, so let's address that, and then let's address the grand gestures.
So forgiveness isn't going to, it's not going to mess with your good judgment. Like,
so important. That's so good. Yeah.
Like what it's going to do is free an emotional burden and the narrative that comes with that emotional burden.
That is profound. Like we got to slow that down for a second. Okay. Go back. That was so good. Okay. So you said
forgiveness doesn't make things that shouldn't have happened okay. Like,
yes, I love what you said about the judgment, that it doesn't take away your judgment and that it actually clears things out, which
you can have the opinion that something isn't okay without the emotional burden.
Yes.
And the resentment. And you can kind of like use that opinion to just become a wiser bird.
Right. I love that.
And create a new beginning with this information that you have now. So it's that forgiveness doesn't let other people off the hook.
I love that. That's so good. Yeah. Something I talk about a lot is the difference between judgment and discernment, and how what I'm hearing from you is like your power to discern and to really see things at a higher level can be heightened. Would you agree?
Right. It positions you in a very high-minded way.
Yes.
Like
Why is that? Why do you
what
think?
happened to me is will never be okay.
Yes.
Of
Yes.
course not, and I would never want to enter into another partnership with people who I didn't know I was compatible with. There was a lot of wisdom gained from that experience.
Right.
And I will never think that's a safe person and, that I should be around. It's not reconciliation either. Like, I know that person's not, I don't know if they're not a safe person, but they're not safe for me. So
Totally.
I need to go forth making sure that I don't intersect with that person.
Yeah. And tell me, on that note, it sounds like you never did have any kind of gesture towards reconciliation or trying to make it right. And so you had to do what many of my clients do that never get that. They don't get it. Right.
And so, so this is like another piece that I think is very confusing in popular understanding about forgiveness is that, with this pardoning definition, and then there's a lot of understanding that it's reconciliation. Forgiveness is really an inside job that's, between you and, again, this connection that we all have to unconditional love, and one of the things I teach, because some people think, well, I don't have a connection to unconditional love. And it's like, well, you do. You just need it to be identified and honed. And that's one of the things I help people do. And again, your ability to identify what needs it and where to apply it. Because so many times we don't get apologies, we have to live in the unresolvable. And I almost think that's what forgiveness exists for, is when it's unresolvable.
Right.
And sometimes the person's dead.
Yes.
Sometimes the person's never going to apologize.
Yeah.
Sometimes, sometimes the person has, a narcissistic mind frame. And when you're a really solid person of integrity who's very relational and really does care for your relationships, when you get around people in situations like this, it's so hard for our brains, because it's we would never do that.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
So it's really about a profound acceptance that wow, there are a lot of people who just don't have, I'm just kind of coming up with these words right now, but let's just say relational integrity, right? They just don't. And we have to navigate life with them. If you have children with someone who doesn't have relational integrity, you have to figure out how to navigate life with this person, and so, I have 3 time frames. I don't know if you saw that when you were looking over my work, but some people there are things that are completely in the past, and those are, those are you forgive, and it's kind of that can have layers to it that might require more forgiveness. But in general, an incident is kind of the most straightforward thing to forgive. But let's say you need to forgive an ex who you co-parent with, and they're not a healthy person, you have to figure out how to deal with that person. And so I actually say that in those situations, so I call that the enduring time frame, and chronic illness goes into that category, and grief, when so there's a lot of things that go into that category. You actually kind of have to see forgiveness as a practice, and the practice keeps you in the high-minded position when you're kind of dealing with a person who doesn't operate that way. It keeps you kind of intuitively clear, because if we're full of really strong emotions and resentments, it's hard for our intuition to guide us through these difficult situations.
Yeah.
So it kind of just helps us stay in the best possible position, even though we kind of have to endure this difficult relationship.
I love that. I love that. My listeners know, but something where I've had to learn all of this and practice it is in my own. I got divorced 11 years ago, and then 7 months later, he died in a car accident. And so there are many things I will never hear in this lifetime, discussions I will never have, right? And we had 6 kids together. So, and they're all pretty young, and things that they will never hear, that I will never hear. And so as I have navigated this space spiritually, of really recognizing where he was still very much living in my head, right? and he's not here. He's not actually here. I can't go call him up and, hey, I want to hear this. I want you to tell me this, right? And it's been kind of a reclaiming of my own peace to very intentionally decide what to do with some of the hurt, right? What to do, how to frame it, how to talk about it, how much power to give it, all of those things. And so when you are describing like the time frames where it's so important, it's so important to look at these things, because there are so many people where, yeah, it is like closed chapter, like it's closed, but so many where it's not, and they still have to figure that out, right?
Right.
Like the co-parenting pieces and all of that. Tell me the different time frames. So I'm guessing we all have things that fit in all three. Would you agree?
Right. And at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. At the same time. Yeah. Tell us more about that.
Well, episodic, which is an incident, typically can be described as an incident. Enduring, which is something that's ongoing. And then epic, which is something that has gone on for a long, long time, and thus can just seem too daunting to forgive.
Can you
so
give us
an epic is like a
of that?
childhood or,
Okay.
a long marriage. We're all anatomically designed to forgive. And this is what another thing that I teach people in the course is kind of how to tap in to this talent or gift or thing that we're born with that we can use to help us heal. And so when we look at something logically, it's like, oh my God, that was a 20-year relationship. Where would I even begin to forgive all this? It just seems overwhelming.
Yeah.
But once you actually kind of decide like, oh no, I do want this, I want to figure it out. The right hemisphere of the brain, which is kind of underdeveloped and doesn't really get the kudos that it deserves, is actually the part of us that heals. And so, but in Western culture, it's all left hemisphere of the brain. We're all like figuring out like science and math and logic and how things make sense. But this other hemisphere of the brain, which is imagination, creativity, intuition, those are all the players that help us forgive. And it actually can identify like, okay, if you want to forgive this long thing, like you start with this. And with the epic time frame, there might be layers. There often are, because it was so huge. But it's totally forgivable. You just have to do it and want it.
Okay. Which leads me to a question. I think we know the answer based on some of the things you just said, but do you believe that there are any things that are unforgivable? It's a big one. It's a big one.
There is nothing that's unforgivable. And there are things that are unpardonable. And there are things that are unexcusable.
I love that.
But there is nothing that's unforgivable, because unconditional love really is unconditional. And it's a medicine, and let's just, use that as an example. If we ingest a medicine, the medicine doesn't say, oh, but, you don't deserve to heal, or there's no discernment of a medicine. It just does its job. And, or the sun just shines on whatever it's in its path. It doesn't say you're a good person, there's no judgment. Yeah. And same thing with unconditional love. It just does what it does. And that is, it just loves whatever is in its path. And so we have the ability to put things in its path so that things are healed, not so things are pardoned.
That's so powerful. To talk a little bit more about, you said that everything is forgivable, not everything is pardonable, not everything is excusable. And how would you recommend somebody in their own mind hold that distinction as they are navigating like that?
It's not about this, forget the pardoning thing. Like forget it. I don't know, but I'm going to just say this. You're right.
You're right. Like,
You're
yes,
right. You're right. This should not have happened. You should not have been treated this way.
Yeah,
this was wrong. Like, you did not deserve this. You are right. All of that is right, And the question is like, do I want to live with the residual burdensome energy of this person's crappy behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to live my life with that, or do I want to live from a higher place where I feel peaceful inside and I can, my relationships will be better, my creativity will be better, my health will be better. There's all this, so much about, how forgiveness helps people's health improve. And so the question is like, do I want to be free of, and I'll use resentment as an example, but there's a lot of emotions, that a person could be having, but do I want to be free of this resentment?
Yeah. Yeah. So with the concept of the truth of unconditional love, right? I know it's not just a concept, it's something that's so powerful. With unconditional love, can you tell us a little bit more, like talking to my people who are dealing with infidelity, right? Who feel deeply, deeply betrayed.
Mm-hmm.
Can you describe what unconditional love means to you? Like when you are working with your people in your course, things like that, what does it mean to you? What does unconditional love mean to you? And how can we tap into it?
So unconditional love is a spiritual force. Some people just feel it. And I'm one of those people. I was just born feeling it. I remember my earliest memories. I remember feeling it. And some people feel it through their love for their families, their love for their vocation. It's this thing, and it's almost like we're peaceful about it. It's a very peaceful love, actually. And it's not joy and excitement and enthusiasm. It's not rah-rah at all. And it's just like this thing that comes through us, and it directs us to unconditionally be in relationship with whatever. We're all different. It comes through us in many different ways. And so it's families, passions. Another big one is nature, is where people can feel it. And so again, like if you're like me, it's right there. And, a lot of people who come to my work, they have that experience also. But I also have had people come to my work where they're like, I don't get it. I don't feel it. So for these people, it's like, okay, so you have to start to study your life and start to see like the things that you're unconditional about. And when you notice it, like really notice how that feels in your body. Like, so it's really an embodied experience. And with repetition, and you start to kind of see it, what I'm saying to people is like, once you see that clearly, that is a medicine.
Yeah.
That is a medicine that you have that you can use. It's not just for, how much you love your kids and you would do anything for your kids, or how much you love art and you would do anything for art, whatever it is, how much you love running, that is a medicine that you can apply. So am I answering your question?
That's so good. Yeah, I'm thinking about how I think that there's misinterpretation too around that concept of unconditional love, that kind of like this anything goes type thing. And I would venture to say the opposite is often true in some situations. Like, for example, I'm thinking about our children. And when we unconditionally love our children, sometimes that means like holding a boundary out of unconditional love, right? Like we're not just going to have zero expectations and call it unconditional love. Like anything goes because I love you. And I think that that can be translated too with my clients dealing with infidelity, that unconditional love is not the removal of expectations or boundaries or of really setting a standard of how we want to be treated. Would you say anything about that?
Right. Yeah, 100%. And unconditional love, like as far as my observation, I'm in my early 50s, like this is a conditional world.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what we're all navigating, is that this is a world of conditions.
Yeah.
I've listened to podcasts where people grapple between boundaries and unconditional love and how to reconcile the two. And so it's helped me to understand that like unconditional love is this thing that humans get to choose to bring forth into the earth, or it comes through in our natural wiring. But to kind of say that if you really, I have yet to be able to do this, but if you really scrutinize kind of every single thing that's going on this planet and in our worlds and in our daily lives, it's all conditional. I have yet to
Yeah.
I have yet to see where, this is a very, tangible, like, place of science and math. And so, but I do think unconditional love is very real and it's very useful. And one of the byproducts of forgiveness is heightened intuition. And, who couldn't use more clear intuition, right? There's like
Absolutely.
so many things to navigate and big decisions to make. That's, there's a lot of byproducts. But anyway, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I love that. It sounds like moving into a space of maybe being more contracted to a space of being more open. And when we're more open, I think that's where we're most open to truth, is when we can receive the things that we need to receive, see the things we need to see. And this is actively, like, choosing to forgive is actively raising your hand for that. And I think sometimes people think the opposite of that. Like, if I forgive, then I, put myself in this box. And what you're saying is it's the opposite, that you're expanding. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. Forgiveness is about liberation. It's not about excusing crappy incidents and crappy behavior at all. Accountability is healthy. Accountability is important. Like the world doesn't move forward in healthy ways without accountability. And I often contemplate the difference between accountability and blame. And, blame has an unprocessed emotional component behind it, right? But accountability is just the facts. And the facts are that someone, for example, someone behaved out of integrity. They violated a sacred contract, like these are just the facts, and forgiveness isn't going to take away the facts, as I said, it's just going to help us like move forward as a wiser bird.
Yep. Ah, so good. Okay, so just a question or two more and we'll wrap it up. But one of the things in your notes was this forgiveness as a delegation. Can you tell us what that means, please?
Oh, yes. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. Yes.
So again, there's this understanding that when we are experiencing strong emotions over a huge rupture that happened, that somehow the healing thing to do would be to muster up this incredible holy ability to have compassion, let go. And it all sounds so great in theory until you're in that pit of the strong emotions. And then you realize, like, I don't have one like shred of me right now that could do that. That was where I was on that fateful night in October 2012. I was like, okay, I will forgive. But then it was like, but there is nothing in me that can do it. And so one of the things I realized that night, it was like, oh, when you know how to access and apply unconditional love, that's the thing that's going to do it. You don't have to do it. You need to know how to apply the thing that can do it.
Wow. Okay.
And so I say, like, when I often hear like, oh, I tried forgiveness and it didn't work, or wow, forgiveness is the hardest thing you can do. So I hear things like that a lot. And I think to myself, well, yeah, because you're trying to do it and you're not enlisting the thing that actually can do it. So I'm not Christian, but I'm aware of, there's actually, I believe in the Bible. I don't think there's as many like stories about Jesus and forgiveness as people think, even though he was definitely the one to popularize it. But one of the most famous stories is as he's being crucified, he looks up and says, Father, forgive the people who are crucifying me, for they know not what they do. And so many people cite this story because here he is in his final moments being tortured, and he somehow has this incredibly wise, he walks his talk till the very last moment and forgives the actual people who are killing him. And yes, all those things are true about this story. But what I find so interesting about this story is that he actually didn't forgive them. He asked Father, what is called Father in the story, to do it. Wow. And I say, like, had someone interviewed him at the time and been like, well, why don't you do it? And he would be like, well, I'm in a lot of pain. I'm dying, like, I don't have it in me to do it right now, but I know something that can. So forgiveness is a delegation. It's like hiring a tax attorney and getting a lawyer. You have
That's
to
amazing.
enlist the resources that, that are skilled at these tasks.
Yep. That's so powerful. Asking for, I could use some support here. And where I have people from all faiths, no religion, but very spiritual or exploring spirituality, things like that. And I think you said that we all are innately, talk more about how we innately can have access to this, like as coming into this world. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's the right hemisphere of the brain specifically. There's a famous Harvard neuroscientist, Jill Bolte Taylor. Are you aware of her?
No.
She was on the track to become like a Harvard PhD neuroscientist, and she experienced a stroke. And it happened on the left hemisphere of her brain and completely took it out for, I don't know how long it took her 8 years, I think, to fully recover from the stroke. But she has this book called My Stroke of Insight, where she went from her entire life being oriented around achievement in science and math and, just jumping through all the hoops to all of a sudden now having this 100% right brain experience. And so it opened her eyes to this whole other part of the human experience that just doesn't get the development that the left hemisphere gets. So we're born with this, and it has all these abilities that are incredibly useful, especially when it comes to healing and forgiveness and spirituality and our spiritual connection. So it's atrophied in most people in Western culture, so it's really about moving those muscles, and so when I teach the course, I am actually having people do a practice every day throughout the course. And there's many benefits to doing this practice every day. But in my mind, I'm really wanting to develop that muscle. I want people to graduate the course and be like, oh, you know what I mean? Like this neural pathway is forged now. This part of my brain is up and going and being used now. And then as I started studying like the actual anatomy of this, I was like, oh my God, we're all designed to do this. It's just not developed.
Amazing. So powerful. So powerful. It goes to what we hear said, that we have everything in us, right? That we already are whole, and that there's just parts of us that need development, right? Just development, but it's already there.
Right. It's there. Right? And think about like how empowering that is, that we all have like the ability to regenerate. We're born with it, and it's just a matter of like pressing the buttons and getting it up and going.
Engage, ignite, whatever that is.
Yeah, ignite. Exactly.
Yeah, I love it. Well, this has been a really powerful conversation. I know that it will be very thought-provoking and useful to my listeners. Can you please, first of all, let my listeners know how they can learn more from you, and if there's anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
Well, this was a very juicy conversation, as I anticipated it would be.
Yep.
And I really appreciate the work that you're doing in the world. I'm sure all the women who you're helping have immense appreciation for you, because yes, like recovering from ruptures that huge, those betrayals that are that big, like we have to, right?
Yeah.
For the sake of everything, like we have to figure out how to get through these times.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me, and thank you for doing the work that you do.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And I, so what I typed in October 2012, I typed in how to forgive, and that's my domain, howtoforgive.com.
I love it.
So if you'd like to learn more, I don't know when you're publishing this interview, but I offer the course once every season. It's a 6-week course, and you can, sign up to my newsletter, and I send out reminders for when the next course is happening. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook, but I don't really do anything there. It's just kind of like a digital business card.
Yeah.
So my main, so to me, like the message comes alive in conversation. So, opportunities like this are kind of like where I put my effort.
Yep, perfect. I will have all the information of how to find you in the show notes so people can start learning more from you there. And then is there anything else you would like to say? Any last words of wisdom or anything you'd like to share before we go?
My main thing is that you are anatomically designed to move forward, to forgive, for new beginnings, to regenerate. And in this life or the next, I hope that you harness and develop this part of yourself. It's so worth it. It really makes every aspect of your life better. It just does. It just, when we heal.
Mm-hmm. Amen, sister. I love
Amen,
it.
sister.
So powerful. So many things to think about. I really appreciate you coming and sharing your wisdom. I can feel from you that this is very genuine, that you've done this work. You are an authority in it because you've done it, right? You apply it, you know how to make it work for you. So thank you.
Big believer in walking your talk. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and your wisdom today.
Oh, thank you. My honor.
Thank you for listening to the Heal from Infidelity podcast. If you would like to be kept in the know about upcoming free classes, new podcast episodes, and other ways of working with me, go subscribe to my weekly email. You can subscribe at andreagiles.com/lies-about-infidelity/. Again, it's andreagiles.com/lies-about-infidelity/. I will see you next time.